Hey guys, I came across this video defending Noed, and then it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way with the arguments that he presented. And I know Noed's getting nerfed and all, but I wanted to just kind of, help enforce why Noed really needed that change, because Noed was just a big time crutch. So I'm just gonna go and play some of it, and I'll summarize kind of each point that he makes, so we're not in here too long.
Perks that tell you exactly where totems are and speed up how fast you cleanse them. First is small game, which
Okay, so his first point is just run perks, bro, to counter this perk. It's basically the equivalent of saying just bait out the dead hard, bro. It's not a good argument because in the same video, he states that Noed isn't even that good. So if it's not that good, why should you run a perk to counter it? Why should a survivor run this perk, waste a perk slot just to counter it? It's asinine to say just pick perks, bro, because that counters Noed. That's not a good argument for Noed. Is it a counter? Yeah, but it's not a good point as to why Noed is actually not as bad as you claim they say.
Where totems are.
So I'm just gonna skip over because that's basically the majority of his first point.
Why are you double standards? Yes, we see a lot of double standards in Dead by Daylight. We certainly do. But I think one of the biggest double standards in this game is when people complain about Noed, quote unquote, rewarding bad play. Do you know how many perks you have as Survivor that reward you for bad play, or reward you for being outpositioned, or reward you?
Okay, so he's saying that Noed is okay just because exhaustion perks exist. Noed is okay. That's literally a grade school tier argument. It's so dumb. You'll see that he brings up some examples to kind of justify this argument, but it's framed in a way to make it look just as bad or worse to justify Noed.
Even if the killer outplays you, and not even to talk about and all of a sudden pop an insta heal, and then you get to take an extra hit, or you can pop a syringe after you drop a pallet.
So insta heals is his first example, and he's right that it is just as much of a problem as Noed because it's really game changing and they're just really strong. Like, you always benefit from bringing items, but again, deep down, if you really think about it, this is going back to the first point being made instead of the second point of contention for Noed, which is not how arguments work. And what do I mean by this? Basically, he goes back to saying just because X exists, Y is okay. And that's not how it works. Because not only that, in the same vein that you make your first point of just run perks, I could just say, hey, just run Franklin's to counter items. As like, it's not an actual argument. You know what I mean? As you'll see, like, who wants to do that? Nobody wants to run freaking Franklin's, dude. It's a troll perk. Like, nobody wants to run it. It's not a fun perk to have. You essentially just have to give up a perk just so that you can even out your side, so you can actually have some fun. This is one of the biggest problems with Dead by Daylight, is having to sacrifice things on your side. And when I'm talking about sides, I mean killer or survivor. You sacrifice things on your side so that the other party can have fun. And I'll just stop there because that's a whole separate video topic. I also want to point out that he says that, exhaustion perks are crutches in the same way that Noed is, and that this is a double standard, that we're okay with exhaustion perks and not the other for Noed. And then in the examples that he gives for the exhaustion perks, he puts them in situations where, like, obviously you do that because you have the perk that that you're running. So, like, for the sprint burst case that he brings up, like, like, you wouldn't do that if you're a good player and you're in that dangerous situation. You wouldn't be there in the first place. Like, it's like, this whole section is really weak. I don't think they're crutches like he states they are. Maybe you could make the case for dead hard, but for everything else, it's really, like, that's not the case whatsoever.
Can be playing as I am here, doing a generator that's out by the street with no safe pallets or anything nearby, at least not that I'm seeing. I just see Nemesis right next to me, but I have sprint burst ready, and I'm doing the gen right in his face. But it doesn't matter, right? Because I have sprint burst. So now I can zip all the way over to the killer shack, and now I can loop him for a good amount of time. And
all right, so he brings up this example of sprint burst in a very precarious gen spot, and if you're a good player, you know that you can get away with doing this shit specifically exposed gens because you brought sprint burst. Why would you put yourself in a risky gen without some kind of plan like this? Like, it's so asinine to work on these gens knowing that the killer is right there without a backup plan, right? Why would you give them a free hit? If you're there without counterplay, there I said it for his first point, right? Then you're playing dumb. If the killer follows you to shack, he's also messing up anyway because he's wasting time knowing that you have sprint bursts to get to that shack. Notice that he doesn't mention that the killer is messing up here. Because why? Because that's why people run Noed, because they do stupid shit like this, chasing a survivor into shack, knowing that they have sprint bursts and they're just gonna waste a huge chunk of time. This is gonna be a common occurrence in this video where he shifts the blame to survivors. He also frames the rest of the perks that he brings up in a bad light just to make it a false equivalence. It's literally not the same thing, and I'll explain this point a little further on.
There's not shit he can do
I'm gonna
about
skip
it.
forward to the
instead of
balance
getting,
landing section.
perk over and over again. Another example here with balance landing. I come out this window and Trickster makes the right read and comes down instead of committing to the top, and it doesn't matter because I have balance landing. So
Balance landing is so situational that you have to play around balance landing because the majority of the time you don't even get to use balance landing in the match. You have to go out of your way to really use this perk. So like in this situation, like he only got to use it because he was on the second floor of the house. Otherwise, like let's say the gen was on the first floor, like what? He's not gonna get away. Like that's why you bring it to counter these situations, man. Like, and it's not even a good counter anyway because balance landing just doesn't happen a lot of the time. I just think that he's purposely ignoring that there's perks in this game that you run to compensate for some kind of weakness that survivors have, right? So like freezing after a fall, working on a risky gen, using a pallet so you can use lithe. I don't remember if that was it or not. Using the windows to get a speed boost, getting just enough distance just to cover, you know, the bloodlust hit, you know, stuff like what's that one perk that gives you when you're injured, you can do stuff more, you know, like a little bit faster, kind of stuff like that. It's what good players will do. They run perks to supplement or to help counter weaknesses that they might have. And also, these arguments that he's putting out for exhaustion perks substantiate themselves with the assumption that the players are good enough to take advantage of these perks in any way. Most of the time, I think most people will not play really good survivors that will really optimize these perks. Not to mention, these exhaustion perks aren't even a good comparison for Noed, because you know what is? Adrenaline. I think adrenaline is one perk that he could have talked about that I probably would have agreed with, because you get rewarded for just basically being at the end of the match and you get a free heal, it ignores exhaustion, and you get a free speed boost. I think that is so ludicrous that this, if he had included adrenaline, like that wouldn't have been, this video wouldn't have been that big of a deal to me. But you know, I think really the biggest counter to Noed is boons, because boons were so busted and they were so good, and they basically forced the killer to do the exact thing that Noed forces survivors to do, which is, you know, pretty dumb.
Decisive Strike and Deliverance are two other really good examples of second.
Okay, dog. And he sends second chance perks too. DS and Deliverance, bruh. How many times have people actually have gotten to use Deliverance? And like, secondly, it's not a second chance perk, dude, because you already got downed and hooked. Like that's not a second chance. That's not what you're saying is a second chance, dude. It's not. And it's the same thing with DS, because it's only a second chance if A, you gain enough distance to make a play out of it, and B, you're actually getting tonaled, which in that case, DS kind of justifies itself. With DS to even activate, you had to have gone down already. So it's not a second chance, dog. This is a stupid argument.
It's rewarding bad play, or you can look at it as a second chance, which that's how I look at it. All of these perks are second chance perks, and there's nothing wrong with that. That is exactly what No One Escapes Death is. You have a second chance at the end. Either you've made some mistakes in the
Okay, so first I want to say that he says that he views these as a second chance perk, and what he's trying to do here is trying to make you see this in a certain way so that the argument makes sense. And that's not how arguments work. They're just supposed to be straight on. There's no like, well, if you look at it this way, you know, it actually makes sense. Like that's not an argument, bro. But you know what? Let's say let's go with it. So you get a second chance with Noed, right? So why is it okay for Noed to get a second chance and not survivors? Why is it okay for killers to bring this perk to counter their own bad play or good teams, and it's not okay for players to bring these perks that will counter these dangerous situations and good killers? You cannot pick both. Like this is one and one. I get that he's saying that they're both second chance perks or whatever, so they're both okay, and it's really not, because they're both not good for the game, first of all, and secondly, they're not even on the same tier, and I'll explain that point later on. It's like buying the auto sniper as CT in CS:GO and complaining that it's okay because they have AKs.
This, you have a second chance at the end. Either you've made some mistakes in the game, committed to a chase too long, maybe didn't pressure the right gens. Now you have a chance at the end to make something happen. The biggest difference when comparing exhaustion perks to Noed is that exhaustion perks are infinitely better, because all 4 survivors can have them, which in red ranks they normally do, and as I mentioned earlier, you can use them over and over and over. But with Noed, it just takes 1 perk.
So this is true. I do agree that as a group, exhaustion perks are better, because at the end of the day it will affect every survivor's chase. However, again, this is assuming that the player is good enough to use those perks to extend the chase times, and it only affects chase times.
I don't have any problem with any exhaustion perk DS.
Right. So he's saying that Noed is basically not that good anyway, right? So why make a video even defending it in the first place? See, the thing is that you would be forcing the population of the game. Like, let's say that Noed was normalized and a lot of people were comfortable running it. You'd be forcing the population to bring perks to counter this garbage ass perk. Literally, by this perk existing, players essentially will have 2 or 3 perks instead of 4 to choose from, because 1 will have to be reserved for totem searches. And Lord knows how solo queue is. You could be the first one down and there goes your totem strat. Like, this counter argument relies on the population of this game not being morons, which most of them are. And even in a group, like with your survivor with friends, just by this perk existing or being like potentially equipped, you guarantee at least 1 party member in that SWF has to run a totem counter to counter this perk. I don't think there is any other killer perk in this game that forces survivors to waste a slot just to counter the potential of it being in the next game. Do you see what I mean? Like, in my group, we had 1 person that ran a totem build, but you know what? It's not fun at all. Like, often they would want to just change to a different build. It's not a fun game style to play against for 1 fucking perk. Especially if this particular survivor gets chased the whole game, or they get taken out while, like, you know, we're actually supposed to be doing gens and stuff, then that's it. There goes the whole plan. Like, and then just to counter that, then we'd have to have 2 people running some kind of totem counter. Like, do you see how asininely strong this fucking perk is? Even if, like, you don't even equip it, it's like it's understated how, like, game changing Noed would actually be. And if Noed was actually normalized, like this, like everybody would run totem perks or whatever, all the survivors would do is just remember totem spawns, and then now you don't have hexes at all, because everyone would just be cleansing all the time. Bye bye hexes. And then the killers would complain about survivors playing too sweaty just because they remember this stuff to counter this perk. It is really, really dumb.
Deliverance, any gen rushing, I have no problem with anything. I had nothing at all. I literally don't. I'm just bringing all this up because, in my opinion, it is very comparable. And when we're talking about second chances, if we're going to be complaining about a perk that's not that good, Noed's really not that good. It comes in clutch for sure. During the end game at times, you know, when you need to make up for mistakes you made, or just make up for, you know, fast gens or whatever.
Like, if you're making this many mistakes that you can't get a kill by the end game, why should you get a free kill now? Just because you ran this perk? It's why this perk is hated and it's called a crutch. If I could run your ass in Shack for 5 gens and at the end of the game I end up dead on a hook because of Noed, how is that even fair? Like, it's not. Like, you can't be shifting the blame to survivors when this perk just rewards bad play. It enforces bad play, and that's not what you want to do in this game, because then killers are just gonna play bad because they know they could just get a kill right away, like at the end of the game. Like, that's that's the problem with camping and tunneling, because that, like, the devs are so dumb that they don't realize that those killers don't care about blood points. They'll just keep camping and tunneling because they can. Just like people will run this perk because they can, because it gets them kills, it gets them the results that they want. Like, it's a crutch, dude. And then what happens once you cleanse Noed? Like, these guys, like, don't even know, like, their head from their ass, because they're not good. They're just carried up by Noed. It's a crutch. It's why people dislike this. Like, I can't even, I don't even know, like, where to even go from here. Like, you know, your first argument where you bring in perks just to counter Noed, like, I don't understand why it's okay for you to say that you can counter these perks, but it's not okay to run those exhaustion perks. Like, I get where you're trying to, like, get at here, but it doesn't work, man, because even if it makes it okay, it doesn't have the impact that Noed does versus exhaustion perks. Like, it honestly feels like killers don't want you to have any kind of ability to fight back in this game. Like, I'm not playing Amnesia, or I'm not playing some horror game where I can't fight back. Like, it's fun to have this stuff and to have some kind of counterplay. Like, the issue isn't with exhaustion perks, it's just the fact that killers, they don't give killers anything to kind of counter that either. Like, that's the main problem. The exhaustion perks aren't really the problem here.
But I don't see how this perk is any more busted or unfair or rewarding of bad play than everything that survivors have, including, like I mentioned, all of those items and add-ons as well. The final category that I want to talk about is suspense. Now, this I'm talking about from a survivor standpoint.
This is all opinion, basically. If you find playing versus Noed suspenseful or not, like, I think he makes the case that he, you know, finds it tense. It makes the game more tense because you got to find Noed, and you know how you're gonna rescue this person. But the thing is, if you play this game long enough, you go through a lot of tense situations without Noed anyway. Like, if you want to get rescues and stuff, I don't know, Noed doesn't really do that for me. It's just annoying for me, because especially if I have a really good chase with the killer, and, you know, I'm like dead on hook, and we're in a 1v1, and, you know, I'm close to the gate, I need to escape, but I need to, like, run him first, and then, you know, boom, he gets Noed and he gets the kill on me just because he's got the speed boost, and just because he's able to down me in one hit. Like, it's so it's like blue balls, dude, when you see that Hex little logo come up. It just sucks seeing that, because you're like, oh, well, that's the game. Like, like, I lost because of Noed. Like, it's so lame, dude. It just ruins a good game for people. It just sucks.
Because I do play Survivor as well. It's a bit of a risk factor to your games. There's a lot of split. Once the gates are powered, it's pretty much done gens so fast. We should issue going against it. And if a killer does have it, it is what it is. I guess we shouldn't have done gens so fast. We should have looked around for totems. Maybe, like I said,
shouldn't have done gen so fast. Should have done totems. Like, why are you blaming the fucking survivors for this garbage ass perk, dude? Like, like, why should I die just because you ran this perk? Why should I die if I did my job throughout the whole game? Why should I get punished for it? That's what this perk is. You just get punished for no reason. You do what you're supposed to do, and that's that. Like, especially in solo queue, man. Like, if you're not on the gens, your teammates sure as hell are not going to be on the gens, and they're not going to be getting totems either. Like, the only way this argument would even work is if you're playing with Survivor with friends, and that's when you know you can actually go do totems and know that they're actually accounted for, so you can actually counter Noed. Like, like, it's just dumb, dude. And like I said, nobody's gonna waste a perk slot to just counter this perk. Like, it's just dumb. That's why it's getting nerfed. It's It's so good on its own. The pressure it puts out just by existing, not even equipping it, is so good that it forces survivors to waste a perk slot. It's kind of like borrowed time, right? It's like borrowed time in camping. Like you, like before the changes or whatever. Like for me personally, I had to run BT baseline all the time, and I only had 3 perks to kind of play with because killers, if you got to give them the chance, they're just gonna camp, dude. And it's not fun. Like I always wanted to just take off BT, but like if I wanted my teammates to actually have a chance, I just had to run BT because it's not fair if just to unhook them and then we're just like, well, bye, you know, like especially if I'm injured and I'm doing a risky save, like it's just better just to run BT and not have to worry about that shit. But you know, DBD devs and their band-aid fixes, they give you BT baseline instead of just discouraging camping behavior in some other way. You know, whatever. That's on a tangent. This is their Noed video. I hope you enjoyed my counterpoints. I don't like Noed. I'm glad it's getting nerfed, and honestly, it should just get removed from the game. But this is almost the same thing. So you know, I'm glad I've always been right about Noed, because fuck Noed.